mother, Rose, along with two of his siblings, older brother Joe Jr. and younger sister Kik, were in the visitors' gallery at the House of Commons when Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain somberly affirmed what he had just announced in a radio broadcast. Britain was at war with Germany. Jack's worry, as expressed to Lem Billings 2 weeks before, had been borne out. Ambassador Joseph Kennedy, an unbending supporter of Chamberlain's failed efforts to avert war through a policy of appeasement, had been moved almost to tears by the Prime Minister's mournful radio address. His wife felt the same as she took in Chamberlain's remarks in the Commons. For Jack, however, another speaker on this historic day left the deepest impression. Standing before the Commons as the incoming First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill summoned his compatriots to the glorious endeavor ahead. Outside, the storms of war may blow, and the lands may be lashed with the fury of its gales. But in our own hearts this Sunday morning there is peace. Jack watched transfixed as Churchill declared, "Our hands may be active, but our consciences are at rest." A photo shows the three Kennedy siblings, vibrant and handsome, on their way to the Houses of Parliament. The trio understood that they were eyewitnesses to history, but they had no inkling of how much the war that was just beginning would transform the world and their place in it. In 5 years, Joe Jr. would be erased from the picture, killed in action, and Kik's husband would also perish, mere weeks after their wedding. Joe Sr.'s public career would be destroyed. The war would also tear asunder the European-led international order, as Jack saw up close when he returned to the continent in mid-1945 as a 28-year-old journalist and decorated veteran. Germany had capitulated, and its ally Imperial Japan was ravaged, close to defeat. Much of Berlin, including the Excelsior, lay in ruins. Two Allied powers, the Soviet Union and the United States, stood supreme, eyeing each other warily as they began to fill the geopolitical vacuum left by the war. When Kennedy came back again in 1948 as a junior congressman, Kik, too, was gone, and the Soviets and Americans were locked in a tense Cold War, with Berlin a focal point. This superpower confrontation was still ongoing when now President Kennedy returned yet again in June 1963 and declared before a rapturous audience of more than 1 million in West Berlin, "Ich bin ein Berliner." 5 months later, he met his death, felled by an assassin's bullet while riding in an open-air limousine in Dallas. World War II occupies a central place in this book, the first of 2 volumes on the life and times of John F. Kennedy. Born in 1917, during one World War and at the dawning of the American century, he came of age in a Second World War, then rose all the way to the presidency, only to be cut down at 46, while leading a United States that stood at the zenith of its power. He was a man of privilege and wealth who endured chronic ill health and pain, as well as immense personal tragedy, and whose storybook life captivated millions of people, not merely in the United States, but abroad. Not merely in death, but in life. Known for his handsome looks, cool and graceful demeanor, and persistent womanizing, Kennedy was gifted and flawed as a politician and as a person, and his 1,000 days in the White House saw missteps as well as successes. But through his magnetic leadership and inspirational rhetoric, he elevated Americans' belief in the capacity of politics to solve big problems and speak to society's highest aspirations, while in foreign affairs he showed it was possible to move from bitter hostility toward the Soviet Union to coexistence. The public responded. By the middle of 1963, close to 60% of Americans claimed that they had voted for Kennedy in 1960, although only 49.7% had actually done so. After his death, his landslide grew to 65%. Kennedy's average approval rating of 70% while in office puts him at the top among post-1945 American presidents, and later generations.